Ever felt that, huge challenge of just getting things done?
Yeah.
Especially in a really big organization.
Oh, absolutely. The bigger it is, the tougher it gets sometimes.
Right. Now imagine that organization is the entire federal government.
Yeah.
Impacts millions. And the challenge, making sure people are accountable, responsive.
That's a massive undertaking.
Exactly. And that's what we're digging into today. We're looking at a very recent presidential document from the Federal Register. It's Executive Order 14171, signed January 20th, 2025, published just a few days later, Jan 31st.
Very fresh then.
Very. And our mission here is to break down what this EO actually means, for how the government runs, who's in key jobs, and, well, how that ultimately impacts you.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The title itself is pretty direct. Restoring accountability to policy influencing positions within the federal workforce.
Right there in the title.
Yeah. So that tells us what sparked this feeling that maybe accountability was missing. What's the administration's view here?
Well, it starts with the president's constitutional power, Article 2, The authority to manage the executive branch, make sure laws are carried out effectively.
Yeah.
And this order, it's basically built on the idea that without more accountability in those key roles, that whole function is sort of hampered.
Hindered.
Yeah. The document even says accountability is, quote, sorely lacking today. Pretty strong words.
And they don't just say it, right? They point to some numbers.
They do. Some quite striking figures, actually. It mentions that only 41% of supervisors in the civil service feel confident they can actually remove someone for, say, serious misconduct or insubordination.
Less than half. Wow.
Yeah. And it gets even lower for poor performance.
How low?
Just 26%.
Wow.
That's barely over a quarter of supervisors feeling they can effectively manage someone who isn't performing well.
That paints a picture of, well, difficulty in management.
It suggests a real challenge, yeah. Addressing underperformance or, non-compliance within the system.
And the order really zeroes in on these policy-influencing positions. Why the specific focus there?
Because the power those individuals wield, it's seen as delegated directly from the president.
Okay.
And the president is, crucially, the one person in the executive branch directly elected by the people, accountable to the people.
So the idea is that these specific roles need to be aligned with the elected leader's agenda.
That's the core argument. They
Yeah.
need to facilitate the policies of the person the public put in charge. There's a direct line of expected action there.
And the document gets pretty blunt about resistance, doesn't it? It mentions.
It does. It talks about numerous and well-documented cases of career federal employees resisting and undermining the policies and directives of their executive leadership.
So pointing to a real tension.
Absolutely. Which, brings up that fundamental question, how do you get efficiency and responsiveness to the elected leadership?
While still keeping a professional, nonpartisan civil service, that expert core.
Exactly. It's a balance, a really tricky one for any administration, honestly.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for me. This isn't just some brand new policy out of thin air.
No, it's not.
It's a reinstatement. It's undoing something the previous administration did. That feels like a real tug of war over the bureaucracy itself.
You've nailed it. That's a key dynamic. EO 14171, this new one, it immediately brings back Executive Order 13957.
This was from
October 21, 2020. So yeah, it's picking up where that one left off.
But to do that, it had to get rid of something else first.
Precisely. This new order explicitly revokes Executive Order 14003.
Signed January 22, 2021, right after the change in administration.
That's the one. And EO 14003 was specifically put in place to protect the federal workforce from the changes in that 2020 order.
So it's literally reversing the reversal, putting things back, but maybe not exactly the same.
Right. Back to the 2020 status, but with some really important tweaks this time.
And the biggest tweak seems to be the name change.
That's the most visible one, yes. What was called Schedule F in the original 2020 order is now officially named Schedule Policy Career.
Okay, Schedule Policy Career.
Yeah.
And this puts these jobs into something called accepted service. Can you break that down simply? What does that actually mean?
Sure. So accepted service basically means these positions are taken out of the regular competitive civil service system, the one with all the standard merit system rules and protections.
So there are exceptions to the rule.
Exactly. And the practical effect is it gives the administration much more flexibility.
Flexibility in hiring.
Hiring, yes, but also critically in dismissing people in these roles. It bypasses a lot of the standard civil service procedures.
Which impacts their job security, their independence, compared to regular civil servants.
Significantly. That's the whole point, really. More direct control.
Okay, so let's talk about who this actually affects. Which jobs fall under this new schedule policy career? And what does it mean for how policies, actually get delivered to us?
The order spells it out. It targets positions that are described as having a confidential policy-determining, policy-making, or policy-advocating character.
That sounds like high-level stuff.
It generally is. But there's an expansion, too. It now also includes anyone directly or indirectly supervising employees in schedule policy career positions.
So managers of these roles, too.
Right. And it also gives the director of OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, the power to suggest other types of duties that might fit.
OPM. Got it. So OPM plays a big role here.
A huge role. The OPM director is tasked to promptly recommend to the president which positions should be placed in schedule policy career. They're central to identifying these roles.
Okay. And this brings us to accountability. Section 6B of the amended order seems really crucial here. What does it demand from people in these jobs?
Yeah, this part is really nuanced but incredibly important. It states very clearly that employees or even applicants for these schedule policy career jobs are not required to personally or politically support the president or the administration's policies.
Okay, so they don't have to be political cheerleaders.
No, but, and this is the key part, they are required to faithfully implement administration policies to the best of their ability.
Faithfully implement.
Yeah.
Even if they disagree.
Yes. Consistent with their oath to the Constitution, and importantly, recognizing that executive authority rests solely with the president.
And if they don't?
Okay.
If they're seen as not implementing faithfully?
The order is unambiguous. Quote, failure to do so is grounds for dismissal.
Wow. Okay, so you could maybe draw an analogy to a private company, right? Like you might not love the new corporate strategy.
Right.
But your job is to execute it once the decision is made. This seems to apply that logic here.
It's a similar principle applied to these specific government roles. But, in government, there's also that oath to the Constitution, not just the boss or the current administration.
That's a really important distinction. This order seems to say, for these roles, implementing the administration's policy is consistent with that oath. And if you don't, you're out.
That's the message, yes.
It feels like a major shift. It could change how advice is given, maybe? Like, does it encourage just alignment over honest, potentially critical professional judgment?
That's the big question people are asking. What does it do to that dynamic between political appointees and career experts? And what about the long-term quality of policy if dissent or alternative views aren't welcomed in the implementation phase?
Yeah, big questions. And there are ripple effects on regulations too, right? OPM has more work to do.
Absolutely. The order directs the OPM director to promptly amend the civil service regulations, specifically to roll back changes that were made by a rule from April 9th, 2024.
What was that rule about?
It was titled Upholding Civil Service Protections and Merit System Principles. The new order basically says, if anything in that 2024 rule gets in the way of the purpose of the reinstated 2020 order, EO 13957, it needs to be rescinded.
Okay, so clearing the path legally. And what happens in the meantime before OPM actually makes those changes?
This is pretty immediate. The order states that until those rescissions happen, certain specific parts of the existing regulations, it lists sections in Title V of the Code of Federal Regulations, like 5 CFR Part 302, Subpart F, and others related to appointments are basically switched off. Inoperative and without effect is the phrase used.
Yeah.
So the new order's framework takes precedence immediately, even before the formal regulation changes are finalized. Shows real urgency.
Definitely sounds like it. And you mentioned OPM identifying more roles potentially.
Yes, that's another significant piece. Within 30 days of this order, the OPM director has to issue guidance to all the agencies.
Guidance on what?
On additional categories of positions, they should think about recommending for this new schedule policy career designation.
So it's not just the obvious policy jobs. They're looking to potentially expand this.
It certainly sets up a framework for that, yes. It suggests this isn't just a fixed list, but potentially an ongoing process of reclassifying roles under these new rules. Could be quite broad eventually.
Interesting. So a mechanism for expansion is built right in.
Used that way.
And there's some general clauses too, right? Just standard legal stuff.
Pretty standard, yeah. Section 7 clarifies the order should be implemented consistent with existing laws, budget availability, and importantly, that it doesn't create any new legal rights for people to sue or challenge actions under the order, beyond what already exists.
Right, the usual caveats. Okay, so if we boil this down, the core impact of this deep dive, this executive order is really reshaping what accountability means for key federal jobs.
That's a good summary. It's aiming to tighten the link between the executive branch's intentions and the actual implementation of policy by people in these influential roles.
And connecting that to the bigger picture for you listening.
Well, this kind of action really highlights that constant push and pull, that dynamic between the political leadership that changes with elections and the permanent career civil service.
Right.
And how that dynamic plays out directly affects how responsive, how efficient the government can be in delivering the services and policies that impact your life every day. Think about public health rollouts, economic policies, environmental regulations.
All shaped by how effectively policy gets put into action.
Exactly.
So the stated goal here is boosting accountability, making sure policies get executed. But it definitely makes you think about that balance, right?
It does. The balance between effective, faithful implementation, which every leader wants, and the traditional independence, the expertise, the institutional memory that career civil servants bring.
Where's the line? And what happens to the long-term stability and effectiveness of the government if that balance shifts too far one way?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How might this ongoing shift change what it means to be a public servant in the long run?
Something to definitely keep an eye on and think about as this all unfolds.